Welcome to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-hosts, Anthony Rivardo and Mike Iarapino. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo, and Mike_NYY. Make sure to hit that like button for our YouTube followers, and if you're listening to our audio podcast on iTunes or Spotify, we very much appreciate the reviews on iTunes. It helps us grow and produce better content for you guys. So thank you very much if you're willing to do that for us. But let's jump right into it. How you guys doing? Mike, you still playing Fortnite and basketball since last week? And Anthony, how's the sea lice?
I still have a few spots that are still itchy, but it's really not nearly as bad as it was. But I'll say, during the middle of the week, between last time we recorded and now, there was a couple nights where I woke up in the middle of the night and was just itching like crazy. Like I had to bathe myself in Benadryl. It was terrible.
Oof. Yeah, I had the same thing. I was itching, but I woke up and I was just dreaming about Daniel Jones slinging to Saquon Barkley. So a little bit different than sea lice, but
it's a weird reason.
We have a lot
itch.
to talk about. I know, right? I have something wrong with me.
Just itching for football season. That's all.
I know. I'm itching for football season. That's a better way to put it. But we have a lot to talk about, and today, luckily, we waited a little bit to record the podcast because Dion Jones was signed, and they re-signed Coleman to a 1-year deal.
Is it Dion? No, Dion Lewis. I was like, something's wrong there. All right, yeah, Dion Lewis.
Yes, Dion Lewis. So he played with the Tennessee Titans for the last 2 years, and then played with New England for 3 years previously, with Joe Judge there as well. So this is a great signing, in my opinion. I think he takes a lot of slack off of Saquon Barkley. And he picks up some of those extra reps, to keep him fresh and ready to go. And he's a really good pass blocking running back and can receive well. What do you guys think about this? Starting with Mike, what do you think about Lewis and if he can make an impact?
Yeah, I hope this is better. People are talking about Shane Vereen. I'm hoping it's better than that. So, Vereen was all right.
Good.
He had one good season here, statistics-wise. And, it's just like the type of guy you got to use the right way. I don't mind Dion Lewis on third and long situations, but when you look at Saquon Barkley, he's really a three-down back type of guy. I'd rather have him on third downs than Dion Lewis, but if something happened to Barkley, you could have Lewis and then another guy behind him, maybe Wayne Gallman, maybe somebody else through the draft, maybe Royce Freeman, Elijah Penny, somebody like that, and you can rotate those guys. So I don't mind the signing at all. It's a 1-year deal. I think he's 29, 30 years old, so not sure how good he'll be at this point in his career. He probably was better a few seasons ago, but it's not a bad signing at all.
Yeah, I like this signing a lot. I just think it's a nice depth piece and a veteran depth piece at that. So no young guy like Wayne Gallman who's got to learn. Dion Lewis, he's been around for a while. Like you said, he's 29 years old, and I like what he adds in the receiving game. And I don't expect to see him on the field very often, but I think that he'll be impactful when he is on the field.
I wonder, in New England they used Lewis and James White a lot together back in 2017. I think they won the Super Bowl that year, if I'm not mistaken. They won every other year, so there's a pretty good chance that they did win. But looking back, I wonder if they're going to use Lewis. Keep saying Jones, Lewis and Barkley on the field at the same time. In 2017, he was really good at 896 yards on the ground and 214 yards through the air. He had 9 total touchdowns. So this player, he's coming in and he is a quality guy. And the Giants can find ways to utilize him in the passing game, the blocking game. It's all about creating mismatches and unpredictability on offense. And that's something that we didn't see with Shermer last year and Ben McAdoo a few years ago. I think Jason Garrett has a lot of pieces here that he can play with and really confuse defenses. When you have Toy Lolo and Evan Ingram on the line of scrimmage, and then you have Lewis and Barkley there, you can't possibly tell who they're going to go to. So I think it's really interesting. Do you guys agree and think that the offense is going to be a lot more multiple and diverse this year?
Yeah, it won't be the same as what New England did because, we don't have Josh McDaniels, and I don't know what Jason Garrett's preferences are, really. I feel like he's more of a 2 tight end guy, but that's me watching Jason Garrett from 2012. So, a lot can change, obviously. I would not mind personally having Saquon Barkley and or Dion Lewis against linebackers. That sounds like a dream matchup for us, and if those guys can get open and, man coverage and get separation, I feel like those can be, easy 3rd down and 3, 3rd down and 4 type conversion plays, and that would definitely be huge for the offense.
Yeah, and what I like about Garrett, he is a run first guy, which I'm not too crazy about because I think the passing game is more efficient. But,
Hmm.
the whole team is based on stopping the run and running first because of Dave Gettleman. But what I do like about Garrett is that he does an excellent job with play action. He worked wonders with Dak Prescott getting the play action game going and setting up a lot of great passes, open receivers for him, and that's why he had a career year the past 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, and the Giants also got Corey Coleman today, or rather,
Hmm.
re-signed him to a one-year deal. He's been injured the past 2 years, so I like this move. It's I feel like it's almost like a sympathy move for the Giants. They're like, we like Coleman. He's a high character guy, and he has a ton of talent. The guy, at his peak, especially in college, was phenomenal. He was a former first-round pick, so he has a lot of talent. Injuries have just really hurt him. I think he tore his ACL last year, and it'll be tough to come back from. But a one-year prove-it deal is probably going to be a minimum contract, and I think that's good for him. See what he can do. Maybe contribute as a kick returner. I don't really want to send Jabril Peppers out there anymore, considering last year like broke his hip and was out for the rest of the year. So I'm open to trying guys who aren't going to drop punts, but also can pick up some yards. So maybe Coleman fits that role. We'll see what they do with him. But what do you guys think about him? I like the signing.
Yeah, I mean the injury happened like over a year ago from when the season's going to start, so he's going to have a long time to recover, and he should be
Yep.
100% for sure. I think it happened in training camp, I believe, so he'll
Hmm.
have a long time to recover. He was really going to kick returns last year. I think back to that, like I think it was a Monday night game against San Francisco, had like two or three really good run returns, and I know like kickoffs aren't really as big now because basically 9 out of 10 of them are touchbacks. But when he gets the ball in his hands in space, good things could happen. As you said, a former first round pick, so I like the talent. He's still pretty young, probably like 26, 27 ish, if I had to guess. So
Hmm.
maybe a lot left in the tank for a guy like that, and I don't mind the move at all.
Yeah, I like the move a lot because I think it's low risk, high reward. Obviously, it's a cheap deal and it's a 1 year deal, so it's not a long commitment. He's 25 years old, by the way, Mike. And
Okay.
So
what
young.
what I really like about it is he's so young. And if you ever go and you read the interviews that he's had over the past couple of years, he talks about why he failed in Cleveland, and he's very self-aware about it. And he said that
Hmm.
he was a child and he needed to grow up. And he said over the past couple of years he has grown up a lot and he's matured a lot and he's done a lot better with watching film and improving his game. And I remember hearing all this last offseason. I was getting excited to see what he could bring to the table. And then obviously he suffered that injury in training camp, which really
Hmm.
sucked. But maybe he's still got his head on straight going into next year, and he's telling the truth, and he did improve, and maybe he can really be a part of the offense this year.
I
Yeah,
like him more than
hopefully.
Corey Latimer, that's for sure. I am
I mean,
definitely more
Corey,
Cody Latimer. Sorry,
Cody.
yeah,
Cody, yeah.
definitely more on board with that. He has much higher upside than Latimer does. I mean, Latimer as a receiver,
Cheaper too.
yeah, he might make some down the field plays for you here and there, but I feel like Corey Coleman still has this potential that has not been like maximized
Hasn't
yet.
been
He hasn't
exposed.
really, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah, so he has more
I
of a
totally
ceiling in
agree.
my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Latimer's another injured guy. He can't stay on the field, and he seems like a great guy. Like I see, LPG on Twitter, they always doing, giveaways for tickets and stuff. So he seems like a really good player and a really awesome dude. But at the end of the day, it's your performance on the field dictates, where you end up and how much money you make and how long you stay in the NFL in general. So, he hasn't really been a factor for the Giants. And, he was a former second round pick with Denver, I believe. So,
Hmm.
hasn't been exactly what we wanted, but it's okay to let him go. We'll get a guy in the draft, hopefully. But the next thing on the agenda is the offensive line. And this is a big, big question mark for the Giants moving forward because they have the fourth overall pick and the 34th overall pick. So, we're looking at a position where, they could take Isaiah Simmons or they could go offensive lineman or offensive tackle, specifically left tackle, because it doesn't make sense to spend the fourth overall pick at right tackle unless you have a guy that can play both sides of the line that can, fill that position and maybe switch over to left tackle next year. They're not really interchangeable, so you really have to have a guy that's played both and understands the technique in both areas. But I'll start with you, Anthony, because I already know who Mike likes. But who is your preferred offensive tackle if the Giants, are going to go that route?
Yeah, it's probably going to be Tristan Wirfs. I think he's really athletic. I know some people think he projects better as a guard, but I think he's shown enough in pass blocking situations, and obviously the athleticism is excellent. He seems like a high IQ player. I think that he would be the perfect fit for the Giants if they decide to go that route at number 4, which I personally don't think they should. But if that's where
In
they
this
go,
scenario.
Tristan Wirfs is my pick if they go that way.
Right. And, I've done a lot of research lately on the offensive lineman, and Wirfs is a really, really talented player. He's one of the most athletic offensive tackles I've ever seen. I mean, he posted a 4.85 40-yard dash in the draft. That's incredible for a guy of his size. And what I like about him the most is that he really can stand his ground. He has good core strength, but he's really smooth at moving as well. He can maneuver well, and hunker down when need be against pass rushers. My only issue with him is that sometimes he loses balance and he goes too vertical in pass sets. So he uses a lot of angle sets instead of jump and vertical, and he can turn his shoulders a little bit too vertical and get exposed, what they call a soft shoulder. So I've been doing a lot of research on that, and Wirfs, is a really good athletic player, and I think a good coach like Mark Colombo coming from Dallas, having worked with some of the best guys in the league last year, can really bring the best out of him. And he is a former right and left tackle in Wirfs, so he can play both positions, and I really like his upside, probably the most of any player or any offensive tackle in the draft. So a great option, but what do you think, Mike? You like Wirfs? I know you don't really like anybody but Andrew Thomas.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've actually been watching more of these guys, of course, as the draft, is upon us. And, though I like everything about Wirfs, I mean, sometimes you see technique issues. He could get beat inside on pass reps sometimes, which I guess is something
Stunts
you could
specifically.
fix. Yeah, stunts, of course, as well. So I watched a lot of Jedrick Wills today, and I'm telling you, I might have a 1A, 1B type situation going on here. He might be the safest guy for all offensive tackles in this draft. He's great in pass protection. Awesome. I mean, he's not the run blocker Andrew Thomas is. I think Thomas is the best one in this group. Maybe Mekhi Becton,
so
who I have concerns about Becton in pass protection, but
Right.
run blocking, I think Thomas is tremendous. But Wills might be the entire package. There's not really any flaws in his technique. You can definitely tell he watches a lot of film and just studies the guys he's going against and stuff
Absolutely.
like that. So I love that. And he's a guy that you can teach. I think he has a very high ceiling as well. So if you're gonna go safest pick at number 4, which is what I want, which is why I have a problem with Becton, because as I said, you can lose your draft in the first round, but you can't win it. I want the safest guy who's going to be this franchise left and right tackle for the next 10 to 15 years. And I think Jedrick Wills, Andrew Thomas, even Tristan Wirfs are definitely the safer options in my mind.
Yeah, I'll agree with you because I've recently been watching a lot of Mekhi Becton film in preparation for my scouting profile that's going to be on the YouTube channel soon for all of you watchers out there. And what I see with Becton is, I mean, the dude is a mammoth. He's ginormous, and he's very powerful, but he has like no technique. And oftentimes he'll just try to shove people rather than actually get in stance and block them. He'll just like swing his arms and try to punch them to the ground. But yeah, he's huge, but he doesn't really know how to block, and he has to learn. And he's a very boom or bust prospect in my mind, because I do see like speed out of him, athleticism. He showed it at the combine, and sometimes he gets to the second level and he pancakes somebody and it looks really awesome. But like you said, Mike, in pass sets, there's a lot of concerns, mainly with his technique. He really just has to learn how to play football before he gets drafted. And, it's going to be something that wherever he gets drafted, obviously he needs a great coaching staff in place to get him ready to be a starting left tackle. But I don't think that he's a day one starter. He'll go out there as a day one starter because he's going to be a first round pick, but I don't think he's going to be instantly successful because of his technique problems.
Yeah,
Right.
he's more of a project in my mind. If I agree with that.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Agreed. And Becton, with a guy that size, was he like 364 pounds or something crazy?
16.
It's really going to be easy for elite pass rushers to knock him off balance. They'll know how to use, that lack of like hunkering down, that lack of core, strength to, take advantage of him. But that's, leading me back to Wills here. And you don't need to be a really big tackle to be a really good player in the NFL. And that's a big misconception. People are like, oh, Becton's huge. He's going to be amazing. That's not entirely true. Wills is a little bit undersized. He's 6'4", 312 pounds. So ideally he'd be a little bit heavier. But he's fundamentally one of the best prospects in this draft, especially at the tackle position. NFL.com's Lance Zierlein said, like, quote this, his game is tailor-made for the NFL and his range of success is good starter to all pro. So, when you're talking about a guy who's going to come in and be a good starter at the very least, you can't really pass up on an option like that. And I know Andrew Thomas is also like pretty close to that as well. But the difference being is that Wills is so good fundamentally. If you see him, his vision is unbelievable, especially on those stunt plays. For example, I watched one play specifically where the edge rusher and interior defensive lineman were running a stunt, and he wasn't looking at either player. He was looking right in between them to see his peripheral vision where they were going, and then he keeps his hands out to feel what the his left guard, or rather his right guard was doing. The problem with Wills is that he's only a right tackle. So they would have to adapt into the left tackle position if they really wanted to make the most out of him, and I don't think that that's going to happen. Which is where we go back to Andrew Thomas, and him being a true left tackle. So like Mike, I want you to talk a little bit more about Thomas and what he is good at and what he's bad at.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's a tremendous run blocker. I do think he's the best one in this group. The one concern I have with Thomas is his hand placement and pass blocking, but I think that can be coached out of him, and that might just be a Georgia thing. They're kind of weird with like having their hands too inside. I have no idea why they do it, but it's just
Yep.
a weird thing. So if they fix that with Thomas, I think very high ceiling for him. And as I said with Wills, it's just very close between those two. I might lean Wills at this point because he might be the more polished prospect that can help the Giants win in 2020. I
Despite
think
being a right tackle.
Thomas, yeah, could be a better player. I think both guys can play each position because I know Thomas played right tackle his freshman year. I don't know about Wills. He might have played left tackle at some point, but Tua being a lefty, of course, you're going to have the blind side guy at right tackle, so it makes sense.
Exactly.
But he's good enough to play left tackle in my mind. So I'm a big fan of both guys. I really can't go wrong. They can't go wrong here. And I can deal with Wirfs as well. I do feel he's a bit limited compared to these other guys in terms of ceiling, but he's also a very solid prospect, so I can live with one of three of those guys for sure.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I made a list of positives and negatives for Thomas, and the positives really outweigh the negatives here. His recovery is really impressive. The way that if he gets taken advantage of, loses that leverage, he recovers really, really well. Great leg power. He's well coached, fundamentally sound, really high football IQ. Identifies stunts and blitzes really well. He's a true hog molly, and that's really what I like about him, is that he always is looking to find work. And that's one of the things that you see. He's never dead on a play. If he beats his man, he's driving him to the ground, or he's finding somebody else to block. You know what I mean? Like that, you don't find a player. He has that grit and that mentality that you really want in an offensive tackle. That like he just doesn't stop until the play's over, and even then he just keeps going. The negatives I see with him, he can struggle to get to the next level, or rather to the second level in run blocking. He's not the fastest offensive tackle on the board. But that can be that's a minimal concern with him. He can still get there. That's just like we're trying to reach for negatives at this point. He's a little small for the tackle position, but again, when you have a guy like Wills who's similar size, you really don't factor that in as a really big negative. And he can lean a little bit too much in pass protection instead of standing tall. I've seen him lean a lot, especially in run blocking. He'll drive and he won't stay balanced, which can throw him off a little bit at times, but I don't think it's that much of a deal. That can really be coached out. Coming from Georgia, I think he's playing in one of the best teams. You can't really get much better than that. So I'm happy with Thomas. Wills, really any of these prospects are really good, but Thomas, I think Mike is right on this one. If they're looking for a left tackle to replace Nate Solder, that's the guy you want to go with. But what do you guys think about Nate Solder? Is he going to bounce back this year or what?
He can't be as bad. That's the way I look at it. He has to be a little better at least. I'm hoping that the off-the-field struggles he had with his son last year, definitely influence his play on the field, and hopefully that's all better next year. But he wasn't that bad in 2018, the second half. So if we can get the second half 2018 version of Nate Solder, left tackle won't be the biggest issue in the world. But you have to look at all options here. The Giants can't go into 2020 saying, yeah, we have our left tackle, no big deal. Like there has to be some sort of plan here in case it doesn't work out. And it gets even, I mean, they can't get rid of him now. They have to have him for this year. So whether it's left tackle, right tackle, bench, I don't know what it's going to be. They have to have some sort of plan for Nate Solder in case he doesn't really play that well.
So there's one scenario that I really wanted to talk about, which is kind of like a mock draft situation here. The first round would be Isaiah Simmons, blessing you, Anthony, in your desire for an off-ball cover linebacker, or rather defender, as he is self-proclaimed, which I really like. I really like how he's a self-proclaimed defender, not a linebacker, because he can do so much more. He can play that mid-high safety look, off-ball coverage. Really, I want to lock down tight ends for God's sakes. I really am tired of watching Jason Witten. I said this a few weeks ago, like 40 years old, can't even get a job at CBS as a commentator, and he's burning the Giants in the red zone still. Like, that's mind-blowing to me, and I'm really ready to get a guy like Simmons to lock that position down, lock that void and that issue down for the foreseeable future. I'm tired of it. But where I'm going with this is that in the second round, they can go after a guy like Austin Jackson. And Austin Jackson's out of USC, a really good player, but he's raw. He needs time to develop, and this is where I'm looking for the Giants to take a risk here, because if you get a guy like Simmons, you have a defensive playmaker that's going to make a serious difference for the foreseeable future. And then you can get a guy that can play left tackle but needs a little bit of work. And using your time a year with Nate Solder still on his contract, using this next year to develop a guy like Jackson makes a lot of sense to me. What do you think about that idea of taking a defender and then waiting and getting a developmental guy that has a lot of potential in the second round?
That's my dream scenario, man. If we can land either Chase Young or Isaiah Simmons with the 4th pick, I'm still not letting the Chase Young dream die, so I'm going to keep it going. But if we can land one of those 2 players with the 4th pick and then get a solid offensive tackle at 36, that's my dream scenario. That's exactly what I want the Giants to do, man. I mean, it's perfect because I don't think that we can rely on Nate Solder. I know you mentioned his second half of the 2018 season, and, I thought about that going into last season, and then it didn't show up. I was like, he'll be better because he showed improvement towards the end of the season, and then it didn't show up. So why should I expect it to show up a whole year later? I don't think he's going to be very good. I'm not very confident in him at all, and I don't believe in him as a left tackle right now. So, yeah, I know I'm making the case for an offensive tackle at number 4, but I still think the value is there. You get that defender, change your defense for 10 years, and then you hope that you hit on a offensive tackle in round 2, just like we hit on a left guard in round 2 in 2018 after drafting Saquon Barkley 2nd overall. So that's the ideal scenario to me.
I think to me that's like a misconception people have right now is like you grab Simmons and then you get like a tackle in round 2, because the guys you're going to get at round 2 a tackle are not going to be nearly as refined as the number 4 overall pick. So as much as I love to have Simmons, I just think looking at this Giants roster right now and the situation they're in with the Nate Solder contract, they already have on the roster 2 very solid inside linebackers. I don't think they're stars, but they're solid players. Blake Martinez and hopefully a healthy Ryan Conley. I think just there's more of a hole at left tackle right now. I just personally believe like there's some guys in round 2. If Josh Jones slips, that'd be great. The dude from Auburn, Prince Tega, I don't even know his last name. What is it, Wanagu or something like that? He was a pretty good prospect when I watched him. So there's some guys, but I don't think they're day 1 type starters in round 2. Right. So the guy you're gonna get at number 4 overall is definitely the day 1 starter as compared to those guys.
Definitely, and that's where the Nate Solder situation comes into play. It's interesting. I really like Simmons, and I really like the offensive tackle position. This is the first time where I'm like confident we can't mess this up. We really can't mess this situation up. If the only way this goes down,
Derek Brown
is smirking. Exactly. Yeah. I know he's gonna say it. Derek Brown is the only way that this can go downhill. And I think I saw a tweet today. I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet today from Jim Nagy. He's a Senior Bowl director. The guy is one of the best scouts out there, and he said, if you pass on a guy like Derek Brown, coincidentally, or Simmons, you're not drafting best player available. If you're going for an offensive tackle, in those early draft picks, you're not drafting the best player available. You're drafting for a need, right? And the Giants don't necessarily need a left tackle right now because, like we've all said, Nate Solder is going to be on the team this year, and they're not going to move him to right tackle. So why not just draft a top defender and then wait until next year and get your tackle, right? Like that is what they could do. Alternatively, they could say, okay, let's trade a few picks, move up into the first round, and get a back end, top tackle. But I think they'll all be gone by the 25th pick, in my opinion. So I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited to see, how we can possibly mess this up, because knowing Gettleman, something will go down or something wrong will happen. Derek Brown will be in blue.
I would think Mekhi Becton is a mess up too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I think that would be a mess up at 4. Becton or Brown, and I think that they've been mocked to us a lot. So day by day, I get more and more
Jerry
scared.
Jeudy a few times. Some NFL analysts are absolute clowns.
I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, but we don't need Jerry Jeudy right now.
You don't necessarily need him, but he's such a. If you're going by best player available,
isn't Lamb better than him?
That's debatable. I mean, I think Lamb has more upside because he played on the outside more often, and Jeudy played primarily just from the slot. So the Giants don't necessarily need that. But if he could succeed from the outside, I think his value is, way above most other players that are going to be there on the board.
Right. I mean, I just can't imagine taking a wide receiver in general. I think it's crazy to think that they would actually spend a pick on Jerry Jeudy. I see Darius Slayton as a wide receiver 1 in the future. I think he can get there. He's not there yet, but I think he has the potential to. And like that's what I'm betting my on my bet, my coins on. I'm thinking we have a guy in Darius Slayton that's really really talented, and I don't want to draft a wide receiver and supplant him because now we have Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton, and Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb. Like that's not it doesn't make sense in my head. I think plugging a guy like Simmons in is the right move. But
I
what do you
agree,
think?
but the way I see it is, Golden Tate's not going to be here much longer. Darius Slayton is a nice outside receiver, and Shepard and Tate are both slot receivers. So if you did take that receiver, you've got that X factor. Because I wish more than anything that I got to watch Daniel Jones to Odell Beckham Jr. And
Right.
I'm not
I
going to be
would
able
like that.
to. I mean, it would help Daniel Jones tremendously to have like an X factor receiver that he can hit every time he needs to. Fourth and short, got to get the ball to somebody, and it might be a touchdown. Jerry Judy's that guy. He could take it to the house. And then you have him. You've got Shepard in the slot, and then you've got Slayton on the outside, opposite of Judy. I mean, combined with Saquon Barkley,
They
that's
should have traded for DeAndre Hopkins. It was going to take a second, fourth, and a
oh
washed
yeah.
up player.
Well,
I mean, they
That
might
would
as
have
well have
been
done that.
amazing.
it should have been Golden
Right.
Tate and a second. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
they would have had
Arizona
a-
is like light years ahead of us, and they're in year 2 of a rebuild, and we're going into
Oh,
year
I
3,
know.
and we have holes up the wazoo. I don't understand.
Don't get me started.
Like but this is what I'm talking about. A lot of people are like, you're being negative, and I'm like, no, we're going into year 3 of a rebuild, and we still have a long way to go. We're basically going into our third head coach in 5 years. And we're in a position where we really have to force the team to adapt to a whole nother regimen, and it's really really concerning to me. But also at the same time, the misconception like with the idea that we want a wide receiver is based on the fact that we didn't see Daniel Jones, last year have that true pass catcher, all those weapons on the field at the same time. And he didn't even have Saquon Barkley for a good chunk. He didn't have Evan Ingram for most of the season. Sterling Shepard was out for most of the season. If you have all those guys in there at one time, you suddenly realize that he has a ton of weapons to work with. And he doesn't really need like a Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb. He has plenty of talent. Now they got Dion Lewis, and they're going to hopefully have a better offensive line put together. So like that's kind of where my head's at. Like we have the talent, it's just a matter of staying healthy.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think we have enough weapons right now, so I do disagree with Anthony there. I would not take the wide receiver fourth overall. You don't trade Odell Beckham, a year and a half ago just to take a guy fourth overall. Like, you might as well just kept OBJ at that point. So if Guttleman's philosophy is I don't need the outside number one guy, then, we released Steve Smith, I think, in Carolina as well. So we kind of know how Dave Guttleman feels about these wide receiver ones. And to disagree with Alex, I don't know if I consider Slayton a wide receiver one in the future. I don't know if I see that yet. I could be wrong about it. I see him as a wide receiver 2 right now. Of course, I hope I'm wrong, but I think, there are some
You're wrong
issues
too.
with drops and route running could be a bit better, but he showed a lot of promise last year, so I could see it happening, but it's just hard to project him being a number one wide receiver for the future at least.
I mean, he led all rookies in I think he tied with Metcalf for touchdowns with like 8 touchdowns. And he led the Giants to 740 yards. And I know this all in my head already because I've written these stats so many times. And, when you have a player like that, especially on an offense that's so like dysfunctional, you have to imagine he can be a lot better. And I think he's going to I think he broke out last year, but I think he has a lot left to prove. And there was games where he disappeared. Like there was games that literally didn't target him. And like, after the game, they're like, Shermer, like, why didn't you target Slayton? He was like, we just didn't target him. Like, that's not good enough to me.
Like the
If you have
first
a guy
half of the
playing that
Eagles
well.
game, he was like
Exactly.
2
Oh, yeah.
touchdowns and
New England's-
100 yards, and like they just don't target him the rest of the game. It's like, well, what are we doing here? Like this guy's looking
That's what
like a
I'm saying,
star,
like-
but we're not going to target him the rest of the game.
Not only
I-
that, but like you look at no, go ahead, Anthony.
I was just gonna say, I think Slayton. I think he projects as he's a wide receiver 2, but like a really good wide receiver 2. And what I fear that might happen, and I don't necessarily support a wide receiver at 4. I just wouldn't get all my panties in a bunch like most people would about it. I think it would be cool, but I'm not. I want Simmons, but with Slayton, I think if you're banking on him to be your wide receiver 1 in the future, what's going to happen is it's going to be like Terrence Williams, where Des Bryant left the Cowboys, right? And then you had Terrence Williams, and they're like, he showed promise. He's going to be the number 1 receiver. He's ready for this role. And then it was like they had 2 solid number 2 receivers, and they never had that X-factor number 1 receiver. And then they were just middling and 500, and they sucked, and they didn't have that receiver to get to. And they had to trade
Right.
for Amari Cooper and give up a huge asset. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket with Darius Slayton because he is a 5th-round draft pick, and he did show a ton of promise, but to me, really solid wide receiver 2. I hope he becomes a wide receiver 1, but I don't necessarily see that.
I mean,
Shout
to
out
build
Terrence
off of
Williams.
that, yeah, I mean, screw Terrence Williams, screw
Gave
all
us that
Dallas
week
Cowboys
1
players.
victory.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
he
do you
went
remember?
down
And
with
he
like
didn't go in
2016.
touchdowns.
Yeah, that
yeah.
was
I love
amazing.
it.
Playoff
No,
year.
but to build off of what you're saying, Anthony, I do agree. Like, I think you can't put all your chips in on Darius Slayton being a wide receiver one. I do think he will and has the potential to do that and be that player. But the reality is, like, I don't think wide receiver is the first position you're looking to plug in as like one of your top players. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like wide receiver is the position you allocate a ton of resource to, like the last thing you do. You know what I mean? Like the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, if I was like a team that was like, had a good offense but not a great offense, that's the kind of deal I would make. Bring in a really good wide receiver and then put my offense over the top. I don't think like you start like the Giants did with Odell Beckham Jr. and hope that he suddenly makes the team great, because it didn't happen. And they try to supplement that with spending like $100 million on wild like 5-year contracts with like for Damon Snacks Harrison, Olivier Vernon, and who's the other guy, and Janoris Jenkins. You know what I mean? Like those contracts are crazy, and you don't start building a team with a wide receiver. And I think the Giants are far off from being a like amazing team, and getting a wide receiver now wouldn't make them any better per se. Their offense is good, and they have the playmakers. The defense is really needs that most help right now, and so is the tackle positions. So that's I kind of want to like go with this next portion. I want to do a little bit of a mailbag before we have to wrap up. But one of the mailbag questions, and I'll have Mike start off here. How would you feel about taking Simmons at 4? And by the way, this is from Noah Gordon on Twitter. How would you feel about taking Simmons at 4, Zach Bond at 36, and then Matt Hennessy, center from Temple in the 3rd round?
Who was the first guy? First pick, you said?
Simmons.
Simmons?
What would you think about this?
I would honestly say no to that. I just feel like you need to have an offensive lineman in one of those first 2 picks. I know
agree.
you have the center going in the 3rd round. I have not watched much of Hennessy. I'm not going to like sit here and act like I've watched him before.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
From Don
yeah,
Bosco.
he could be a good player. 3rd round could be fine, but the first, I'm not the biggest Bond guy, high second. I know people have different perspectives about it. I don't think he has the athleticism.
He's Kyler Fackrell.
Yeah, it would not be the right pick in my mind. I would rather have the more athletic option. So, 1st round, obviously, I would like to have Simmons, but I do think there's bigger issues out there, and I still want to address the left tackle spot first and foremost.
Okay. What do you think?
That's fair enough. I mean, anything with Simmons at number 4, I'm happy with. And, I like Bond at 36. I would prefer if it's an offensive tackle at 36, but I think Bond's a pretty talented player. I think that would be a good pick there, though. I don't necessarily think it fills a need to go Simmons and then Bond. I think Bond, if you go offensive tackle 4, makes more sense. But, yeah, I haven't watched Matt Hennessy either. I've read a couple things about him on the Draft Network, that he's pretty good. So we definitely need a center. I don't know why we didn't address that in free agency. I really thought we were going to, but we didn't.
McGovern would have been great.
Yeah.
Or Glasgow.
Oh, yeah. But the only problem I have with that scenario is it just doesn't address the offensive tackle position, and then it has you scratching your head. Well, what are we trotting out there at offensive tackle? Is it really going to be Cameron Fleming and Nate Solder, or
Nick Gates?
I saw someone on Twitter also say Jason Peters on a 1-year contract. They should do that. What do you guys think of that? I mean, he's out there. He's like 45 years old, but
I don't think they have the money.
That's
the Giants don't have money anymore, and this is where the draft is coming into play now, because I think they have to allocate these next first few draft picks towards essential positions. I think if they get Simmons, they got to go offensive tackle in the 2nd round, and they got to go center in the 3rd round, because the center position has been a disaster with Jalapio. They're getting injured every year, and he's still not good when he's playing. And then you need a tackle to develop, because Nate Solder will be gone in 2021, I'm expecting. And then Simmons fills a huge defensive playmaker gap. Like, we have Jabril Peppers, and he's great, and he showed a lot of promise last year. But pairing, Peppers at strong safety with a guy like Simmons at linebacker, who can, is a multiple kind of guy, you have a defense here. That's something to work around, something to build off of, and you have a secondary in training with Bradbury and free safety Julian Love. Which I think he will play there. That's a pretty good defense to start with, and a good interior defensive line. Now you just need a pass rusher, and that's the big question. Where if you get Marcus Golden back, this defense might look pretty damn good in 2020.
My question is, what do you do with Ryan Conley in that situation? Because you have Martinez and Simmons, and you have 2 inside linebacker spots. So at that point, what happens with Conley?
You
Connolly
just don't
develops.
sign Martinez. You just
Too late.
Well, the thing is,
you go back in
Connolly's really
time.
good in coverage. Connolly's a good cover linebacker, and that's. I think that they need to have good depth. Having Mayo and Connolly as depth linebackers is awesome to me because those positions specifically get injured very often.
Yeah. Well,
The
luck, yeah.
Yeah, the thing with
Exactly.
Ryan Connolly is a lot of people mention him on Twitter, and I always see Art Stapleton for some reason always responds to people. He says it over and over again. The dude's coming off of an ACL injury. We don't really know when he's going to be ready and what he's going to be like when he returns, and I actually agree with that a ton. I think it's kind of going to be like
Don't hold your best.
If Ryan Connolly comes back and he's, performing like he was, it's a bonus. I'm not building the team around Ryan Connolly. He's kind of an afterthought to me at this point, but I know when he's healthy, he gets plugged in, and then your team just instantly gets even better. It's like that extra step, but I just think you can't really bank on a fifth-round rookie who played good for 4 weeks and then blew his knee out. That's kind of tough to do, even though he did look really good, and I'm a huge fan of his, but not banking on him. I'm hoping he gets healthy and he's the same player when he gets back.
Right. I mean, he looked great. He had 2
Mm-hmm.
interceptions, and he,
Yeah.
balled out against Washington, balled out against Tampa Bay. I loved watching him play. I mean, he beat out Alec Ogletree by the time Alec Ogletree woke up to go to the game in the morning. Like, it was incredible to see how fast he overtook Ogletree, and I was so excited about that because, I mean, the fact that Ogletree had to change his number to try and change things around and and actually become a good player for the Giants shows us exactly all we need to know in his tenure, in New York. When you have to change your number to try and play better, something's not right. And Connolly smacked him around in practice, gave him the old wazoo, and then suddenly he overtook him as the Mike linebacker. And I think, he played awesome. And if he can develop off of that, what else can you ask for?
Well, maybe Connolly will play so well that he'll overtake Martinez as the starting linebacker.
That would actually piss me off, to be honest with you.
Oh
That
yeah,
would piss me off.
it's,
That would really piss me off.
you know how I feel about that contract. So
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna
3
keep
years.
cracking
$14 million
jokes.
for a backup inside linebacker. I could see it now.
Well, it's basically what we had. We had $13 million for Alec Ogletree.
Yeah,
More.
you're right.
Yeah, exactly. We had more. We had so much money allocated to a guy who had to change his number to be a good player. And Blake Martinez is like almost seems like a replica, but he's younger and has a little bit more potential. He looks like he's in slow motion. If you ever watch him on film, like he looks like he's running in slow motion, especially in coverage. It's like scary bad. That's why this pick, like that signing, makes me think they're going Simmons at 4. You have to have a guy that can cover paired up because you can't trust Martinez, to be there in coverage. You have to have a guy that can draw back and really help in the tight end category. I am not ready to see Blake Jarwin plague the Giants for the next 15 years, and Blake Martinez be sitting there in the backfield like watching everything go down. I can't watch it happen at AT&T anymore. I just can't do it. But yeah, that's my thought.
I think you're right, honestly. I think, the Giants probably think they found their guy in Martinez. I think Anthony said this last week, actually. They probably think they have their guy in Martinez, but we as fans know that's probably not going to be the long-term answer, and it might not work out too well next year, especially in the pass coverage situations. So I honestly still think they're going offensive tackle because I do think Gettleman and Joe Judge and all those guys think they have their inside linebacker for the future.
Especially if they trade back.
yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I think they have their linebacker, and like everybody's looking at this and they're like, oh, it's setting it up perfectly to get Simmons, and then the defense is like going to be excellent. I think the way Dave Gettleman sees it, he's like, yep, we got our linebacker, cross Simmons off the list, let's get the offensive tackle. And it's Gettleman, it's probably it.
Yeah, Gettleman is always confusing to me because if Blake Martinez does end up flopping, we're in a position now where the entire fan base was like, this is a shit move. All at the same time, and we're like, how did you not see this? But we all saw it. Even the Twitter trolls and everybody else on social media is saying the same thing, and Dave Gettleman, who's supposed to be a master evaluator, can't even figure this out. So I'm really, really hoping for his sake that he doesn't mess this one up. This is the last straw for me, and I think it's probably the last straw for John Mara, who gets more letters than Anne Frank. So I'm worried. I'm concerned, but I'm trying to stay positive, especially with everything going on. It's really easy to get really get negative in the world. But I hope everybody is safe and healthy first and foremost. That's really important to us at Empire Sports Media and the Fireside Giants. That everyone is making sure to stay healthy and watch over your elderly loved ones because they're the most at risk in this time. But we're here. We're here to make this a little bit easier for you and your lives, a little bit more enjoyable during the quarantine days. I think I'm gonna remember this for the next 40 years. I'm gonna tell my
Mm.
kids one day, you weren't even here for the coronavirus pandemic. They're like, but what do you mean? I thought it was Modelo. No, it was Corona. Okay, so that was my dad joke of the day. I really hope you liked it.
Hater.
Yeah, I had a feeling you guys were gonna hate it. It's okay. But, I just want to thank everybody, just for tuning in and being here with us because it's hard for everybody right now, and everyone's lives are affected. Everyone's working from home, so it's tough. Everyone's taking classes online. I know Anthony and Mike are grinding away on online classes. And Mike looks like he's like, nah, not really. I'm just kind of watching.
Sucks. I hate it.
I know. I used to take online classes sometimes, and it was like the worst experience ever.
Mm.
So working from home is not much easier because you don't have that dynamic. So we get it. We understand that this is a really big change in everyone's lifestyle. But we have the draft coming up. Every sport is down, but the NFL keeps grinding. We're in a perfect time to talk about these players and kind of get distracted from everything going on, but also be aware and stay safe. So we just want to thank you as a cohesive Fireside Giants unit for joining the chat today. And we'll talk to you guys next time. And please leave your comments and review us on iTunes. We love to hear any feedback and questions and concerns. We're always trying to make everything better for you guys. So thanks a lot, and we'll tune in to you guys next time.